Hello, my name is Daniel Hawkins, and I'm a second-year MBA candidate and Centre for Digital Strategies MBA Fellow at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. I'm pleased to welcome Mark Lowenstein, a leading industry exec, advisor and commentator. He's Managing Director of Mobile Ecosystem, and most recently, Mark was also a member of the senior leadership team at Verizon Wireless, serving as Vice President of Strategy. Mark is joining us today as part of the Brit Technology Impact Series. Welcome to Tuck, Mark, and thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Mark, you've had spent most of your career in the mobile industry, and you've had a series of different roles that I think gives you a pretty unique perspective on the industry. I was wondering if you give us a bit of an overview of the things that you've been involved in.
Yeah, I've been privileged to be part of the mobile industry now for almost 20 years. I started actually graduating from the Fletcher School at Tufts, and a group of students and myself founded a program within there called Center for International Technology Policy, and that led to my thesis work in telecom development in India and China. So that's how I sort of made the transition from the School of International Affairs to ending up in the technology and telecom area. So I started to work for the Yankee Group, and then in 1992, Yankee Group is a well-known sort of research and consulting firm in the tech space, and then I founded, while there, the mobile practice in the early 90s when mobile was just really starting to get going. So I had a good 10-year career at the Yankee Group, spun out and did a .com startup for a couple of years, and then founded my own consulting firm, Mobile Ecosystem, which I've been doing for the better part of the past 8 or 9 years, except for the period when I was at Verizon Wireless.
So I know that you also, in addition to all of that, you write a very popular newsletter that's followed by sort of, I think, almost 12,000 people called Lens on Wireless. And at the end of 2009, you were looking ahead to the year ahead, and you described 2010 as a year of transition in mobile.
Well, actually, it was more that 2009 was a year of transition in which actually not a lot of really new, exciting things happened, and then I thought that 2010 was going to be a year where we were starting to get into a whole new sort of generation of what mobile was going to mean from the standpoint of companies that were driving the industry, evolution of business models, evolution of customer relationships with their operator, as well as some important changes from the standpoint of the networks. And so I'd be happy to sort of elaborate a little bit on that if you like, but I think 2010 is going to come down as being a seminal year for the industry with a lot of change.
And so, so far, have you seen some of these trends start to gain traction? Are you seeing it play out as you thought you might?
Yeah, in fact, a few things. Well, first of all, this is a year where we're going to see the next generation wireless networks, 4G networks, deployed in many major cities. First by the Sprint cable company Clearwire venture. They're deploying 4G networks using WiMAX technology in a number of cities. Verizon is also going to be deploying its 4G network in about 25 or 30 markets by the end of the year using a standard called LTE. So we're getting into a whole new framework of wireless network capability as well as economics. So that's very important from the standpoint of networks, because we are in a period where we've seen sort of a compressed cycle of innovation on devices, and what's going on in device innovation is so incredible that the networks are sort of racing to keep up with the demand for speed, for capacity, for performance, latency, and so on. So what's going on in the networks is very important to help accommodate what's going on devices. So that's one important change. Another important change is the real building of an ecosystem to enable mobile advertising. We've seen two sort of seminal events in the industry with regard to that. We saw Apple buy a company called Quattro, and they're using that, a mobile advertising company called Quattro. They're using that to start to build a whole framework for mobile advertising. You're seeing it with the iPad and so on, iAd platform. And then Google acquired a company called AdMob. So you've got Apple and Google, who are two of the most important sort of future players in mobile, who are now both embracing a very aggressive strategy around advertising. So one knows that that's going to be an important area of development for mobile going forward, and also an important area for ways in which content and so on can be effectively monetized. So I think that's another important change going on in the industry. I think the third major change that's notable is an evolving relationship of between the customer and the operator, and sort of an evolution of the operator mindset. So you're already seeing this. So for example, areas where 2 or 3 years ago the operators were very, very resistant to change and technologies or developments to which they were very resistant, like Wi-Fi, for example. 3 or 4 years ago when I was at Verizon, in fact, Wi-Fi was viewed as the enemy. It was viewed as potentially cannibalizing on data network revenues. Now, given all of the incredible demand for wireless network capacity, Wi-Fi is actually viewed as a lifeline or as a friend to the operator because it offloads traffic to the broadband network, allowing mobile network resources to be allocated appropriately. Same thing with Skype. I mean, I was involved with Verizon, and actually right after Verizon was involved with them in trying to fight Skype's petition to the FCC to allow Skype to be used over mobile networks, because again, that was viewed as potentially cannibalizing wireless voice services, very lucrative, profitable engine for the mobile operators. Now, carriers have sort of come completely around on that. They've done a complete 180 and are embracing Skype in sort of a different mentality, because they believe, well, if we have a relationship with a subscriber where they're subscribing to a voice plan for our mobile network, they're subscribing to a data plan, and they're sort of giving us $80, $90, $100 a month, we're going to let them have at it and do what they like. In fact, we're going to embrace, Verizon's case, they're embracing Skype and trying to provide a value-added Skype experience versus just sort of a garden variety application that you would download on a smartphone.
So what you described there is, especially with Verizon, is operators taking a different tact really in terms of realizing they're in an ecosystem and trying to make themselves relevant within that ecosystem. How would you assess, say, Verizon or other operators, their strategies to sort of try and carve out a little space for themselves, a bit more relevance in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so they are at this sort of moment in transition of thinking about, okay, how do we remain relevant going forward? I mean, the traditional argument has been, well, ultimately with Apple and Google and all the other sort of forces in the marketplace becoming more vibrant and so on, that the operators are going to be sort of relegated to sort of being the dumb pipe. Well, first of all, that pipe is going to become more and more relevant, more and more powerful, and more of an asset. So just, you've seen this with the demand on data from the iPhone, that AT&T's network has been hugely taxed, and so anything that can be done there to help that network perform better. So the pipe is becoming more of a differentiator rather than less. So that's one thing. You're going to see more and more attention to wireless network performance, capacity, economics, and so on, number one. Number two, there are some important assets within that pipe that are yet to be unlocked, and I think the carriers are looking at opening up APIs within their network. APIs having to do with location, APIs having to do with analytics, the incredible information they have on their subscribers and in their data warehouse that could be potentially used, albeit cautiously, for opportunities in mobile advertising or to deliver contextually relevant content. There are opportunities that they have in the cloud environment to enable different types of mobile products and services. So they are at this moment in transition in terms of how do they remain relevant sort of going forward and unlocking some of those assets. But it is going to require a change in mentality. It's also going to require that they hire sort of a new breed of talent. My experience historically working with the operators, and even when I was at Verizon, is that they had a lot of sort of great people, but a lot of sort of good homegrown talent, people who've been with the company 15, 20 years, they're telco people. But if they're going to get involved in opportunities around mobile advertising, around analytics and so on, they need to bring in people with expertise in those fields rather than growing it at home.